Hi class, this week we are working in class on setting up our agreed upon class rules and expectations. And so even though you're learning at home, there's still some rules and expectations that you should have for what online learning looks like at your home, like maybe rules about what it looks like when you are working on your papers in your packet. Maybe it's what it looks like when you're online. Maybe it's what it looks like when you're Zooming with your teacher. Okay, so you need to sit down with your mom and dad and figure, or whoever's working with you, to set aside some rules for what learning looks like. This is a story of Howard B. Wigglebottom, and one of the big rules at his family and in school is that they need to listen. They need to listen to their teachers. They need to listen to their classmates. So then that solves some of their problems. So while you are listening to this book, I want you to think, what kind of things do I need to make as a list for what I'm going to agree to do so that I can be safe and I can be learning when I'm at home? So this book is written by Howard Binkow and it's illustrated by Susan F. Corneliuson. Meet Howard B. Wigglebottom. Howard is always in trouble at school because, well, Howard just doesn't listen. Yikes. During story time, instead of quietly listening, Howard bounces around the room. Howard B. Wigglebottom, please sit down, be quiet, and listen. But Howard doesn't listen. Howard B. Wigglebottom, you are bouncing too close to that fan. But Howard doesn't listen. And look what happens to him. He gets his ears caught in the fan. Hey, Howard, watch your step. At lunchtime, his friends try to warn him because they see something that's not safe. But Howard doesn't listen. And look, he slips and falls. After lunch, Howard's friends tries to tell him something important, but guess what he hears? Blah, 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 blah. But Howard doesn't listen. And look, his poor friend got her nose caught in his yo-yo. She's sad. On the playground, Howard's teammates tried to help him. Keep your eye on the ball, Howard. Boink. But Howard doesn't listen. Uh-oh, poor Howard has a black eye now. In the art room, the teacher reminds the class, kids, try to keep the paint on your paper. But Howard doesn't listen, so the teacher asks him to take time out. Oh dear, so look, he wasn't listening, and so he got paint all over his friend. And his friend is very sad. He feels sad. Howard does not like being alone and in trouble. He thinks and thinks about his day. Howard makes up his mind. From that moment on, he will try very hard to be the best listener he can be. The next day, Howard does listen during story time. He waits for his turn to talk and then asks a question about the story. Howard gets a big star because Howard is really listening. While walking home, Howard uses both his eyes and ears to help stay safe. Howard is really listening. Look, because he listened, he stayed safe. I like how I see that his ears are up, his eyes are looking forward at the person that's talking to him, right? He's really being a good listener. He's not playing with his friend or playing with his toys. He's listening. Please hang up your backpack and clean up your room now. When Howard gets home, he listens to his mother. He says, "Okay, Mom." Howard is really listening. And I see that Howard has a smile on his face, and I bet his mama is happy as well. So Howard, he gets extra time to play outside and have fun because his mama was so happy with him. And the squirrel says, "Awesome ears, Howard." Howard B. Wigglebottom is really listening. Look, his mama asked him, she said, "Time for a bedtime story. Please brush your teeth first, Howard." And he's doing it right away, the first time she asks. Look, he's holding his gold star. Almost all of the time, Howard decides to be a good listener. And that's the end. Now, at the end of Howard B. Wigglebottom, in the back of this book, there's a list of possible rules that you might be able to use when you're at home with your kiddos about what it looks like to be a good listener. So it says the first rule is to maybe sit quietly. So when you're learning at home, you're sitting on your pockets, you're not bouncing around or running around, you're sitting quietly. Number 2 is you use both your eyes and your ears to help you listen. So if you're listening to Mrs. Stokes online, your eyes are on the screen, your head is facing forward, or your mom or your dad or your grandma or grandpa. The next one is please don't interrupt. Wait your turn to talk. So you can talk about what that looks like when you need to ask a question. Maybe raise your hand to let them know. Number 4 is to try your very best to understand the person speaking. So maybe think about what they're talking about before you ask. Number 5 is ask a question if you don't understand. Number 6 is to pay attention. That means to be alert and to really know what is happening around you. So those were the list. That was a list of good listening skills that Howard came up with. I want you to talk with your families and come up with what you think are going to be important rules for learning at home this year. I'm excited to see what you come up with.